Welcome to the War Blog. Today we're going to look at the Battle of Diabaly in Mali. It's interesting as it follows on from Battle of Konna, which were to Battle of Konna. So these happened basically at the same time. This happened as this was happening. They lose both of these engagements. So Konna is sort of more to the north of Mali. This is more to the sort of the east, if you understand the geography, just under Mediterranean or wherever it is. So slightly different area. They were both sort of initiated after the Mali forces carried out a lot of bombing on certain areas, which forced a lot of people to flee, and then they basically regrouped and carried out these offensives. So after these two fail, they basically retreat to this Ifagas area, where they're basically, they're on the defensive, and they're basically wiped out. And I say that because it's the words that come to my mind. I'm not sure what, but this was a major loss for the rebel forces. It represents significant change in the tide, following on from these two events. So this is like the 18th of February, or January, so you can see the time scales there. I'm not sure what happened after that in the grand scheme of things in the northern Mali conflict, how long it went on for, but anyway, not to worry about that. I'm just going to sort of have a quick play on this one. Let me sign in. So I'm signed in now. So now essentially they take Diabaly. I have no idea what the numbers are going to be like, and then a while later the Mali forces with French support take it back. So one thing to note is that this river is quite significant, and the road south is on the east side of this river. Now it could be that the river has other crossing points. I haven't really sort of gone into it that far. The map might well do with being reviewed, actually. Maybe there are other features here that I just haven't put in. But as it stands, you're on one side of the river or the other, so this is quite a key defendable point. And later on, the reinforcements coming along from the road from the south, because they come from a place, I can't remember where it is now, Barton or something, held a long way south and west from this road, a major city. But you would have thought that they could just put a defensive point there, but the thing is, you get French special forces and they're airborne. Why in this? I put them in as airborne units, as you say, so presumably you'd be able to sort of probably put them there and clear the bridge, or if they're defending heavily here, probably just take out Diabaly. So that puts things into a slight perspective, making the bridge and the river a little more mute in their significance, but still it's worth bearing in mind. Yeah, exactly, no more movement left. And that's actually quite interesting because what they actually did, they got to a position just outside of the valley, and then they camped for the night, preparing for the next day. Which I found quite interesting because they obviously weren't it wasn't a surprise. They were prepared and waiting for them. The Mali forces were prepared, and I think it's sort of small scale, but they took up particular defensive positions just outside of Diabaly. but I think it's sort of more the tactical level. There's, essentially, there's no point in putting them in defensive position here and here. They're basically defended within that hex. So, the concept of hex encounters still applies here. But they were prepared for them, and they did actually, upon arriving. And one of the things here is that they didn't, at the Battle of Konna, they arrived bit by bit here and there. In this one, they just drove down in a massive convoy of pickup trucks and just went straight into it, really. Obviously, after camping for the night. But if you can imagine that, sort of camping out, I mean, you would have thought that they would have, known that they were there. There would be air strikes and whatever. So it helps you sort of put things into perspective, really, if they can sort of stop and prepare for battle. After prayers, next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, they went into battle. So the Mali forces, in preparation, are just going to sit there. Maybe I should get those dug in. Okay, so I haven't really thought about this, but I guess that's the way to do it. Well, there you have it. That's interesting. That is interesting because I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to play it again because I think we get the idea of what can happen. They're going to sit there and then the other forces are going to come in and they've got mechanised and they're going to oust them. But I think to make it more interesting in the video, I'm just going to do it again and I'm going to do a different strategy. Unfortunately, we've got to. Sometimes I wish I had one of those things where you can just pick the whole stack up and then you just move it to where you want. But one of the things that I do actually prefer about this system is that it makes you think. And when I say that, in a lot of games you can just sort of move things and it takes away the sort of the need to be thinking about what you're doing. But basically it comes down to when I used to play games with hex encounters, and there was sort of a rule that once you've taken your finger off of the counter, that's your move. So if you were to pick this counter up, you could put it there, but whilst you still got your hand on it, like I still got my hand on my mouse, you can now put it there. But once you move to there, or in this case, move to there or to there, etc. Once you let go, that's it, and that's why I do it. But the thing is, when you move counters, there is always that sort of sense of every time you move things, the situation changes. Now you can see the balance, so there's his zone of control is there. You can see how things change, and it's that sort of incremental that I really like. So I think it's better because it forces you to, sort of be a bit more thoughtful about where you're actually moving things. And I do like that sort of, well, do I want to move it there or not type, thought process. So we're back to that stage. Now, the reason I did this again is because I sort of thought, well, what I'm getting to is I want to move. It's like an opening chess game. So in the last one, I just left everything as it was. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put Rook 6 to Bishop 7, whatever that means. That. Now, I could have done it there, or I could have done it there. And the significance of that, possibly say later. To be quite honest, again, I think that maybe that wasn't the move I wanted to make. Well, we can do it again, you know. If I put it there instead, just for the hard of hearing, if I was to have put it there, the point is that they can't get the full surround, and we would preserve an escape route. Now, what I'm saying here is that we've got an escape route because they won't be able to shoot all the way around. But what I can do, move there. Oh no. Well, that's interesting because I forgot to do the end turn, so I've moved the Mali troops there. That's another option, another variant. It's not what I intended to do. That is a complete mistake, but it would have been something I thought, well, hang on, you could do that because it slows things down. So the question is, let's end that turn. What does that mean? Now the bottom line is what we're trying to achieve here is to not lose Diabaly on the first turn. So we could attack with one unit, getting a 5-1. We'll do one more attack with 2 units, getting a 7-1. Right. I just can't think, really. Because if I do a 5-1, that's a gamble. I'm going to try it. That wasn't bad actually, because with a 5-1 you're not going to get an exchange. We know that because that was a 12, so maybe it's not so bad. So he's now being forced back to there, and we only used 1, which means we've got a lot of fresh units. So this guy's got 4 movement left, so they could all basically move into there and take it. In actual fact, this 1 unit, yep, so we've got the DR, and can move in there. And we haven't even moved any of these yet. However, the point is, we've still got all 3 units. So the question is, to some extent, now these units will not be, you can't eliminate these units, because you can't surround them. And so they've lost the ability, but they're going to lose it anyway, we know that. The only question is, should I put them in there fortified? And I think I will actually. So, I mean, the only other question is, how do we want to play that? Now, what I'm going to actually do here is, I think I'm going to leave it with that. But what I meant by what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do something and then I'm going to leave it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it more role play, because I don't think they're after getting these units. So the next thing that we do is just take Diabaly. I'm not even going to bother attacking anyone else. The reason being is because they're not in Diabaly anymore. They're not going to try and attack back because they don't have the forces. And so basically the Mali forces have been routed. And they're holding the bridge from that side of the river. I don't think they've got any more movement, have they? Yeah, just enough to get there. And so they've taken Diabaly, which they now consider to be theirs. And the Mali forces, in that sort of role-play sense, are now holding out on the other side of the river. And I don't think that's a bad sort of, interpretation of what could have happened. Obviously we've got these helicopters that come in because they're written up in the description, and they don't really seem to do much, but we might as well give it a go. Well, I think what Ants are going to actually do is take some of these units and put them there. I'm going to leave that helicopter. But what I'm going to do first, I'm going to leave it at that because I think we can sort of anticipate what's going to happen when, I don't think they come on to like turn 10 or something. I think some of them come on at turn 7 or 8. I think some air power comes on at turn 7. But I'm going to make an adjustment and I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so I've made an adjustment. It's not the adjustment I initially intended to make, but I thought, well, hang on, I might as well do this. I fortified Diabaly because it was fortified, but it was weakly fortified, so I don't really have the ability to put a weak fortification. But what I was intending to do was to put them all in as entrenched. But I didn't do that, mainly because once they move, they become unentrenched. Now what I could do, and I'm thinking about, because that entrenchment will make them really tough. So we'll see how that works. But at the same time, basically it makes them really tough. What I could do is remove one of these units so that there are only 2 companies in there. I put 3 in there just to make it a little tougher. So I could remove one of them, that give it a bit more balance from the initial perspective, because there weren't actually that many in there, although there were quite a few. But so we're playing it now at a different dynamic. So let's go through this, not just move south. I've always been one for sort of trying all the different options. And I can just imagine myself maybe trying to sort of, play slightly differently on this, by perhaps not ending up there every time. Maybe sort of coming down here, thinking, okay, well that's that. And when I get to there, cut across to here, and ending up down here on turn 2, and then doing the attack on turn 3. So cutting across here and coming down here, because you don't have to sort of do it all in the same turn, so to speak. This isn't the only inevitable opening move, so to speak, but it is pretty much the obvious one. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to justify doing anything differently unless you really wanted to just sort of do it differently and have the option, because we've still got an option now to sort of cut across into this road next turn and come around. So that's the end of their turn. Now what they've got now is the option to stay in there and or to do what we suggested last time. Now it's slightly different now because they're fortified. So the thing to say is, well, what difference does that make? So you get so many permutations, and I think a lot of people would sort of call this just number crunching or puzzle solving games. And I think there is something to that, but the thing is, I think it's more than just a puzzle solving, because if you've got to sort of anticipate what's happening and sort of consider what's happening, you're introducing that sort of that that sort of level of the imagination and role playing and trying to sort of align the game with reality, you still got a lot of that perspective. It's not just rigid puzzle solving in that sense. One of the things that the Warblog doesn't really offer a great deal of, but you've got the scope for in the role play side of it, is to consider exits and lines of retreat and blocking lines of retreat. And you might want to say, well, we want to keep that hex there. That's the one I talked about originally. So that would give us 2 units in there, but they wouldn't be able to necessarily. And they might be able to do something along those lines. It's still tough. See, I don't think there's any. I think the best thing to do is to leave them all in there. So they're going to just sit there. So the answer Allah going to do what it did in the first turn. Now, it could be that they're just too tough, and really all we should do is entrench them. One to one. That was interesting. Okay, well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play it again. Because with the 1-to-1 they need much greater odds. This battle only took 3 hours. Okay. However, in this situation we're going to do a siege. Didn't tell how much damage we did, but we did 1.6. So we did enough. We did a reasonable amount of damage there. Now, the situation is they're under siege, so we've caused some damage. Now they can attack back. If they attack back, they don't recover. And the best that they can do is attack the 1-to-1, because there's 3 of them, and they've got defense of 2, and I did give them defense of 2 deliberately to make them a bit tougher. So the best thing for them to do is to sit there and recover. So he'll go from 1.6 down to 0.6. So they're going to just recover. So that's about it. We'll do another round. Now the thing is, do we feel lucky? Let's try another round of siege. So still at 1-to-1 odds. 1.5, 1.4, 2. So it's slow. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pause it again. Okay, so I've made a change. And this time there's only 2. I'm kind of keen to leave it fortified because it sort of helps. Main issue, I don't really have a lot of They don't have enough scope to sort of put in low-level fortifications as if they're fortified or not. But you know, these things can always come in future developments of the game. I am actually sort of, I was just thinking before I did this, how much I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the time when I can do nothing other than this. And I'm not saying I want to. I don't think I'd ever want to do nothing other than this, but at the moment I'm just so pushed. It's been weeks since I did anything really, and you know, I'm behind on the games, and it'd be nice to sort of, you know, have enough disposable time to just sit here and actually, you know, really take the game to the next level. But that's not going to happen for a long while. But I am sort of thinking, you know, that would be quite nice, you know, something to sort of, you know, if I can start earning some money from it, you know, in a serious, you know, significant way, that would help. But even so, you know, in the future when I've got more time, it's still sort of quite satisfying doing it. And you know, I could then add varying degrees of fortification, you know, things I want to do. There's so many things, you know, like escarpments, you know, hex lines that you can't cross because it's a cliff. So you know, quite often you get these in some scenarios where they're, you know, they're on top of the cliff and you just can't. You know, special forces might be able to do it, but no one else can. Contours, I'm not going to do contours, but varying height levels. I've got an idea for that, and it all takes time, and these things will just go away. One day I'll take Microsoft to court trying to update my computer against my will. Okay, so that's them moved. So, again, they're not going to do anything because now there's only 2 of them. Oh, there are 3 of us this morning. No, there's only 2 of you. You're cheating. Okay, so we're going to try the same thing. I don't think the odds are going to be much greater, but two to 1. I think that's fair enough because it isn't necessarily guaranteed to win. So we're at that same sort of situation. I'm going to leave it at that because I think there's a number of ways it could go, and I think it's like a lot of games. Once you've sort of gone through the permutations, it could sort of work in different ways. But I still think there's a lot of playability in that because you know you could play this 10 times and have a lot of fun with it, and you could do that. You know, you could play it 3 times in one sitting. I can remember I used to play games, and you know, you might want to sort of, before you play a major game or something else, you know, you might play 3 or 4 games, but you have something that's going to take you half an hour. And you know how it's going to work, but you sort of think, well, okay, well, we'll see how it pans out, because although you could sort of say, well, this first stage has limited permutations, you know, stay in there or move one unit out. I don't think moving a unit out will change anything, because if you put it there or there, you can send the first unit around, wherever he lands it's where he stays, he can attack, repulse the unit, and then move out. And the only way to maybe get around this problem with the first move, and I think it is a problem, but it's not a major problem, is to, well, there's a number of ways. I mean, it's just interesting really. I mean, my mind is boggling really with the permutations, because you could put a ford or a bridge across here, or you can make this lighter river so that you can retreat across it, or I can remove one of these units, because there are only a few Boko Haram. There weren't a massive company, there were sort of elements of Boko Haram that were there. I could remove that, and you know, that would mean they couldn't get a complete surround. So it's sort of, it's just interesting really. But I think you could play this sort of multiple times. Unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to change the variants like I have, making them multiple times more variable, because the force there now. I'm going to leave it with that. But I think a lot of it would come down to sort of, you know, what if. And I think there's going to be a clear distinction between this first phase, which is going to have virtually no knock-on effect of the latter phase. Question being, really, I think the only option you've got is whether you leave your troops in Diabaly, because you could retreat with the option of retreating, and maybe if I'd left, because the thing is, I don't think they're ever going to win with 3 units. I don't think that the anti-Allah forces are ever going to win if there's 3 units defending in their fort. So leaving it down to 2, but with the 2 units they could just retreat, or they could take advanced positions outside with the intention of retreating and taking up a position behind that river, as we did in the previous sort of iteration of the playthrough. So I hope that sort of takes your interest, etc. Remember, if you want to play this yourself, you have to sign up and you can give it a go yourself. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.